It's just been inspiring to hear people's stories today, and I guess I kept thinking, well, what am I going to add to this? Because, you know, everybody seems to have it down. And then what I realized is what I have to add to it is, as a psychologist, my view and my understanding is about individuals and how individuals think and how they feel and how they behave. And so what I'm hoping to do is to provide that perspective, and then at the end of my presentation, ask you to do some work to merge the individual's strengths and resilience factors with organizations, and so hopefully capture that within the individuals who are in your organizations. Just switch this on. Right. So, as you may or may not know, I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and so understanding and thinking about how people think and feel and how they behave is what I do for a living. But it's also my passion. And long before I became a clinical psychologist, I was a deeply nosy Parker, as some of you already know. So it's what I do for a living, and it's what I love doing. And it's an enormously privileged position to be in, to have people share with me their deepest fears and their dreams and their hopes, and then for us to do some transformative work together as we work with that material. But recently something happened that really has made me rethink completely my relationship with my work and my practice. And the earthquake, with all of their attendant terror and loss and helplessness and despair in some cases, has really catapulted me really into a whole new genre of work, both for myself personally and for my profession. And it was while I was trawling through the research literature on post-traumatic stress, so PTSD, that I stumbled on a paper by Tedeschi and Calhoun, published in 2004, introduced me to this construct, post-traumatic growth. And that, in fact, has really changed the way I work. And so what does post-traumatic growth mean? Defined by Tedeschi and Calhoun is that it's positive psychological change experienced as a result of the struggle with highly challenging life crises. And that's not going to come as a surprise to you, because we've heard so many stories of that happening. Lance Armstrong said, "I don't feel unlucky to have had to go through this." This is after his cancer in 1998. "I learned a lot and I grew tremendously the last 2 years." My other favorite, and there are hundreds of quotes, my other favorite is from the author Reynolds Price. After his near-death experience, he said, "Trauma forces a person to be somebody else, the next viable you, a stripped-down, whole other, clear-eyed person, realistic as a sawed-off shotgun and thankful for air. Not to speak of the human kindness you'll meet if you get even normal luck." Where does it come from? Well, originally, post-traumatic growth was identified in a whole number of areas, including people's health crises, people who'd had cancer, people who'd had heart attacks, people who'd lost a loved one, either a partner or a child. So research in those areas identified this transformation that takes place with a significant number of people after they've had to grapple with the enormous crisis that they're facing. And it was then extended to, and particularly after 9/11, to acts of terrorism, to people returning from war, and to natural disasters. And as you've heard, there is research going on in Christchurch and further afield in New Zealand on how people have responded to earthquakes. The growth of what's been called the positive psychology movement in the last sort of 15 or 20 years has really energized research into post-traumatic growth, with the particular emphasis on the positive aspects, or what comes out of negative events rather than focusing only on the negative aspects of negative events. I do want to make 3 caveats here at this stage. One is that not everybody who goes through a personal crisis or a life-threatening event experiences post-traumatic growth. And we'll talk in a moment about what are the factors that do predict post-traumatic growth. The second point I want to make is that you don't need to go through a personal crisis in order to experience some sort of personal development. And thirdly, and importantly, post-traumatic growth doesn't negate the pain and the suffering that go along with the crisis. It's not a healing process. It's something that happens in parallel. So people who are experiencing post-traumatic growth look positive, optimistic, and so on. That's not to say that they don't need support in their suffering as well. So Tedeschi and Calhoun identified 5 domains of post-traumatic growth, and these have been validated by subsequent studies. The first is people experience a greater appreciation of life and revise their life priorities. And the kinds of things that we notice is people experience a reduction in materialism, which you know, my untutored view suggests has something to do with drop in retail sales. I think that people are, you know, not spending money because they're finding other things more important. An appreciation for small things, kind of stopping to smell the roses, really. People saying things like, even the smallest joys in life take on a special meaning. Things that we've taken for granted for a long time. We're brought up short. We have to stop. And when we stop, we get a chance to see things that we've been rushing by a lot of the time. So it's not surprising that this happens. And people also report that things that used to be big deals to them don't seem to be as important anymore. The second is a greater sense of personal strength and survival, and a sense that people will say things like, well, you know, if I can survive this, I can survive anything. And what I want to ask you to do is capture that moment of confidence, of bravery, and the word courage was used earlier, the sense of I've survived this, and capitalize on that to help people take risks, to embrace change, and so on. The third area is this recognition of new possibilities or paths for one's life, and there have been many examples of that today. And I guess I'm here to back this up and say there is research. This has not only happened here. This is a worldwide phenomena that go on and have been recognized after crises. So identifying new possibilities, and clients of mine have said things like, when I lost my business, I saw that I actually wanted to do something completely different. This was an opportunity to make a life change that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Another family, a couple said, we've wanted to live in an eco-friendly house for a long time. Now we're going to make that happen. They lost their home, and here's an opportunity. Instead of rebuilding what they had before, they're going in a direction that's been kind of a dream for them previously, but now becomes possibly a reality. And really importantly, and we've heard this theme over and over again, that people experience and report warmer, more intimate relationships with others, both at the individual level, so with friends and family, but also at a community level. And here are some of the things that I have heard people say. When he died, people just came out of the woodwork. I realize now how important relationships are. An elderly woman whose house was badly damaged said, I didn't know that my neighbors even knew who I was. And suddenly they all appeared to find out if she was all right and help her. One man said, my family has drawn much closer in the past year, and this was also including extended family outside of Christchurch. And many people have said, you know, we're close as a community. I feel much more connected to my community. And the final area, a domain of development, is a spiritual development, where people engage in fundamental, sort of existential questions that John was talking about earlier, that can lead to significant personal growth, but interestingly, sometimes in very different directions. So one person that I'd seen who had survived life-threatening event, and one of her colleagues hadn't survived, who had been a regular churchgoer, said, I realize there can't be a God.